with another edition of the Ad Podcast. And today I'm super excited. We have a really great guest, Justin Steinman, who's the Chief Marketing Officer of Definitive Healthcare. Definitive Healthcare is the largest healthcare commercial intelligence platform. And really, it's designed to help any company of any size if you want to get in and target the sophisticated area of the healthcare sector. If you want to figure out who are the right contacts, analytics around different data points, and really just making your sales team or your go-to-marketing strategy much more efficient to enter the extremely complicated healthcare industry, then this is a platform that you're going to want to take a look at. And Justin's going to enlighten us into the types of customers that leverage his platform in just a minute. Definitive Healthcare is a publicly traded company available on the NASDAQ at the stock ticker DH. So make sure to take a look at them and look at their financial PR stuff. Justin, so thankful for you to come on the show. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So Justin, you have an over 25-year career in the marketing space. You spent some time in sales and product management as well in the healthcare world. Can you just walk us through your background a little bit and your resume, some of the highlights as you climb the ladder up to the CMO of Definitive Healthcare?
Sure. So I graduated college with a degree in English and history and promptly went to go code SAP for Accenture. And when I graduated college, the only thing I knew about SAP was those 3 letters of the alphabet.
Right.
And somehow I conned them into hiring me. I spent 4 years there, learned all about supply chain management software. But really, with an English degree, I loved to write. So this is the height of the dot-com boom back in 2000. So I convinced, again, the story of my life is I've convinced a lot of people to hire me for jobs I'm not really qualified for. I convinced the CEO of a supply chain software startup to hire me as his first marketing employee. And so I did that for a couple of years before going to B school for a couple of years, because I got tired of people telling me that someone with an English degree doesn't know anything about business.
Sure.
From there, I went and joined a software company called Novell, doing data center, virtualization, Linux, enterprise software. I started off in a sales job, carried a bag for a couple of years before moving into a product marketing job. Wound up doing a variety of product and solution marketing roles at Novell before we sold it to private equity, at which point I moved to GE Healthcare. I knew nothing about healthcare at that time other than the fact that I had health insurance. So again, I continued my trend of convincing people to hire me for jobs I was not qualified for. At GE Healthcare, I was the Chief Marketing Officer for GE Healthcare Digital, which is about a $1.8 billion division of GE Healthcare, or about 1% of GE at the time, so keep you humble. And there I was responsible for marketing everything from our rev cycle to EMR to digital imaging software. Did that for about 6 years. After that, I was really frankly worried about being typecast as a marketing guy. And so I somehow convinced the people at Aetna to hire me for a product management job in healthcare. And I wound up doing that for a couple of years, designing the insurance plans and associated care management and other add-ons for Aetna's commercial business, which is basically anything that they sell health insurance from a 2-employee company up to like the Home Depot and everything in between, right? So you can see how that works, and it's a national business. After about 2 years there, Aetna got bought by CVS, and I pivoted and started building products there that took advantage of the synergies between Aetna and CVS. We launched a virtual primary care product. We launched a no-cost the minute clinic product. We launched a COVID testing product for employers. And then, at the end of launching that COVID testing product, I realized that I really was tired of working in such a large company. Working in a place like CVS, well, it's an amazing place. I was a cog in the wheel, and I didn't feel like I was in enough control of my life, if you will. And that's life inside one of these big companies, and that's how it goes. There's a lot of great things about it, but for me personally, I was ready to do something pretty different. And so I started a job search and wound up networking my way to Definitive Healthcare, which at that point in time was about $119 million or so company. that really had never invested much in marketing. And the CEO hired me to come in here and really build a marketing organization the CEO hired me to come in and build a marketing organization from the ground up. And I've been here since about October of 2020.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, a very, sometimes it feels like we have untraditional paths, but when you look back and look at all the stops along the way, then it starts to make sense, right? And
Yeah.
I think that leads me into one of my next questions. My first job out of school was coding SAP too, interestingly enough. A company in Santa Barbara called Mission Linen hired me, my best friend, and my girlfriend to QA their ADP SAP conversion, which was quite a fun experience. But you never know, what you're going to be doing. But one of the things that I've heard you talk a lot about, even in your intro, but also in other interviews, is the idea that you didn't want to be pigeonholed as a marketing guy. Here you are as the CMO of a publicly traded company now, still in the healthcare space. But I think you have a really healthy perspective on being a partner with the C-suite, in the fact that you have, carried a bag as a sales guy, you've run product, know a lot about go-to-market and product-led marketing. So can you tell a little bit about why that was important for you to distinguish yourself outside of just marketing function in your career, as the different stops that you made along the way? But most importantly, how does that make you a good partner as a data-driven CMO today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I use this analogy all the time when I talk about marketing. I view marketing as the glue guy in any C-suite, right? And so while I don't want to make an analogy that I'm like Dennis Rodman because of all the other stuff that implies, if you're a basketball fan, and I'm a huge Celtics fan,
Nice.
And so if you look at Dennis Rodman, he made everybody else on the court better. He was willing to do the dirty work, whatever was necessary, so that everybody else could do their job just a little bit better. And that's really impacted and really describes my philosophy about marketing. Our job in marketing is to make everybody else in the company more successful, right? And we can do that in a variety of different ways across a variety of different functions. And I do believe that my experience working in these different functions helps me understand the pain points of those people in the different functions around the organization. So I think about, our relationship with sales. Our job is, of course, to get them leads and, get them, but not leads. Anybody can generate 1,000 leads. You want 5,000 leads, I can get you 5,000 leads this afternoon. But you'd rather have 1,000 highly qualified leads that are actually likely to buy something. So, how do we generate the most qualified leads that are super warm for our sales team to take over? But then how do we give the sales team the right tools that they need to close it? How can I partner with our CRO to understand the challenges and where things are falling down in his or her funnel, right? Are you having objection handling issues? Is it a pricing issue? Is it your reps aren't trained issue? Is it the marketing story sucks? What is it? And then how can we as a marketing team help you get that, give them the tools? On the product side, right? How can we help bring market insights, out in the market into our product management team so they can figure out which problem they want to solve? A good product management team can solve any sort of problem, any number of problems. It's our job in marketing to help them figure out the high value problems, the problems that the customers really say, God, this is one that's killing me, and I'm willing to pay a premium for it. Oh, and by the way, our market research says no one else is solving that really high premium, high pain point problem. Product, let's go focus over here. And here are the requirements of what the customers need. It's not our job in marketing to solve how to solve the problem. That's their job. But we can tell them, clearly articulate the problem. And then when it comes out of the factory, how can we tell an amazing story to the company and to the world about what we just did? What makes us first, only, or best? What are the business problems? What are the value associated with it? What's the elevator pitch? How does product marketing tell all of that story? For finance, if you're a public company, you have to help with the investor relations communications and the story that you tell to Wall Street. If you're in a private company, you have to help the CFO tell a story to the board, right? What are we doing? How can you articulate that and build that story to all of your investors, public or private? And then, I also talk a lot about the fact in dealing with finance, it's not my marketing budget. It's never my marketing budget. It is our collective marketing budget as a company. And I always say it's our job in marketing to deliver the highest return on whatever marketing investment the CFO and CEO give us, right? They have a lot of competing priorities as a CEO and CFO. Everybody wants more money. I have to take whatever money is given to us, and our team has to deliver the best return and maximize the value in accordance with the company goals. And so that's a little bit about how I think about trying to be a partner to everybody in the C-suite. You know, if you're the CEO, obviously you're a thought partner to him or her. You're also a communication partner for him or her. CEOs have to have a vision. They don't have the time to actually clearly communicate their vision to their team. So a good marketing leader helps his CEO or her CEO think about how can I get the message out to the masses. And that's something that's really interesting here at Definitive. But during my time here, we've gone from like 350 people to like 800 something.
Mm.
The way you communicate to 350 versus the 800 plus is really different.
Yeah.
And so I've had to help our CEO, who's got a million priorities and a million things to do. It's my job to help communicate his message out to all these people, all 800 people, in a way that they are willing to receive it. It's not the way that I want to deliver it. It's how can the employees want to receive it. And that's a little bit about kind of cross-functionally how we need to be partners.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think I've even heard an interview, you know, as pertaining to the sales side of things, that you embed somebody from your marketing team with sales and customer success, really, you know, not just pushing for those great marketing stories, but being able to develop those relationships with customers where they're willing to share those, right? So I love that idea of really embedding your marketing team with those cross-functional units and not just have it be, you know, a strategy, but really frontline with your team. So the next area I'd love to touch on is just learning a little bit more about the value prop that Definitive Healthcare provides. And I would love it if you could frame this in the perspective of my audience is mainly MarTech, ad agencies, marketing companies, and healthcare is a huge target. You know, for us as an agency, we've dabbled in pharma over the years because it's such a regulated field, and especially in the influencer marketing space, it's very complicated around regulation. You have to be able to speak a very specific language to customers. Can you talk about how marketing organizations might get value from subscribing to a product like yours, and how if companies in the marketing space want to go after, get more vertically exposed to the healthcare genre, why would your solution be a good fit for them?
Absolutely. I can't believe you let me pitch the company here, so I'll do my best to, you know, try not to put too much of a hard sell on here for you. At the end of the day, Definitive, we own a space called healthcare commercial intelligence, which is really, we help people understand, sell into, and win more in the healthcare space. I think we all know this just in, the healthcare market is really, really confusing and complicated. There are so many different players, doctors, assistants, local facilities, imaging facilities, ambulatory facilities, hospitals, organized into integrated delivery networks. There's multiple payers, there's the government, there's drug developers. How does it all fit together, right? And, you know, it's more than just like, what is the contact information of the person you want to call? Like, yeah, we have an amazing contact database, but I like to think that the real value of what we have is context. And let me explain a little bit about how that works. So we've actually mapped the entire healthcare ecosystem, and we assigned a definitive ID. You can think of it like a Dun & Bradstreet number to every player in the healthcare ecosystem. And then we've collected information about them and how they are affiliated, their relationships. So if you came to me and said, how many babies were born in Houston last month, at which hospitals, which ambulatory facilities, which doctors delivered them, who paid for those, and how many nights did the average mother stay in the hospital, I have all that information at my fingertips, and I can give you that in a matter of about a minute or so, right? If you are a drug developer and you are developing a new drug for bone cancer, right? You can come to us and say, help me find all the experts around the world who've published something around bone cancer so I can get their input on my drug development. And then go and find me the doctors who have, middle-aged white male patients between 40 and 52 who are candidates for my drug, and show me the doctors who are treating them. So I can talk to those doctors and see if they want to do it. Oh, and by the way, can you tell me which doctors are likely to prescribe drugs and which doctors are less likely to prescribe drugs? We can do that. On the flip side of that, all the other side of it, true story, one of our clients is actually Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble, everybody knows, they sell disinfectant.
Yep.
They also, believe it or not, sell hospital quality disinfectant. Everybody likes a sterile operating room, right? I know I do. So what we know is we know the square footage of every single operating room in a hospital. We know how many surgeries are performed a day in there. So we can literally sit down with P&G and say, Beth Israel Hospital has XYZ square footage of operating rooms, and they're doing 19 surgeries a day, and every time it needs to be cleaned. And so these people can literally figure out how much, fluid they need, how much disinfectant they need to sell. And then, by the way, we can give you the contact information of the head of purchasing at the hospital and their email and phone number. So you can show up and knock on their door and be like, hey, we know you do 19 surgeries a day in this room, and it's this many square foot. Here's how much, disinfectant you need. Would you like to buy? And you can take that anywhere, right? And that applies to, medical manufacturers, CT manufacturers. I can tell you which CT machines are installed at which hospitals, how old they are, how many CT procedures are done every day, what the maintenance required is. So if you're GE and you want to go after Fuji, I can give you a list of Fuji. If you're Fuji, you want to go after GE, I can give you a list of GE. We'll sell it to anybody, right? We have this entire brokerage of ecosystems so that people can really sell into and understand their customers at a great level of depth and actually go and have meaningful conversations with them. We've sold everything from pet, inspection to software companies, drug development, medical device. I mean, you name it. It's a pretty broad-based opportunity. It's really cool stuff.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. We were in a pitch one time where an agency came to us for help on trying to find influencers with the last name Smith who had a family member who had a cardiac event in a very specific town. And, creative agencies can get very wrapped up in their ideas from time to time. But so many creative pitches are now being driven by the insights that big data provides. And it seems like if a MarTech or an agency that wanted to broaden their expertise in the healthcare space, your data would be really relevant and useful for those folks. So I totally don't see that as a sales pitch. I think it's that's why we love to bring on guests like you, is to not only talk about your expertise, but how is this relevant to the marketing industry and how can they leverage those types of solutions. So appreciate that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, for my next question, you're actually a podcaster yourself. You've launched a podcast at Definitive as well, and pretty prolific as far as how often you guys publish. I know many times you're actually in the studio yourself that you guys have built on site at your offices there in Boston. Can you tell us a little bit about how the podcast idea maybe came to light? What was the implementation like? What was the strategy and why did you do it? And most importantly, how have the results been as far as both the overall macro results, as far as overall tune in and how that drives business results for you, but more importantly, the relationships that you're able to build on behalf of the company as the CMO out there talking to other thought leaders?
Yeah, sure. So I love our podcast. It's called Definitively Speaking. And shout out, you can look it up at definitivelyspeaking.com. We drop every 2 weeks, like clockwork, on Thursdays, generally around 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I know that because we believe that the predictability of dropping that podcast helps build up a regular listenership. And people like to know, when am I going to get it and what's going to be available? So we never, ever miss. We sometimes take the week of July 4th and the week of Christmas off. But other than that, we are religious every 2 weeks about it. The idea came about because we are, pretty limited on our marketing budget. Most of my marketing budget is actually spent on demand generation.
Yeah, lower funnel stuff.
Right, exactly. Very tangible stuff. Getting stuff into the funnel. I don't have a lot of money for advertising or brand building or banner ads or stuff like that. And so I started thinking about a way that we could get our brand out there. And if I could creatively leverage other people's networks to build our brand, essentially.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so my background, in addition to being an English major, is I was editor of my college newspaper.
I think I
So
saw that. I saw a couple of your articles pop up.
right. So I always loved talking to interesting people and asking them questions. And so the genesis of the podcast is basically I'm going to find the coolest, most interesting people that I can and interview them about healthcare. And I'm going to start, as you said, I've been around for 25 years in the healthcare industry. I've built a pretty decent network of amazing people. And so I started calling and smiling and cajoling and saying, come on my podcast. And the angle here is that we're having data-driven conversations about healthcare. The only cardinal rule of the podcast is I never, ever pitch Definitive Healthcare. All it says is this podcast is brought to you by Definitive Healthcare, and I acknowledge that I am the CMO of Definitive Healthcare so people know where I'm coming from. But you'll never hear me kind of give the whole pitch that I just gave you about the product. Never, ever, ever. Right? Wow. It's always about the guest, and I call it edutainment. Right? We're going to educate you. We're going to entertain you a little bit. And if we make it about the guest, and if I bring data to the story, and I do pull some of the data from our great database of healthcare information, but it's always a service to the story. It's not about us. And if people simply listen to this podcast and they walk away and they think, Definitive Healthcare and data, I declare that a massive victory.
Yeah.
That's it, right? And then I ask people in return for being on the podcast to promote it on their social platforms. Right. And so if I get amazing people who are presidents and CEOs and CROs and CMOs to come on, and they've all got great networks, and they're like, hey, check me out on Definitively Speaking, I'm suddenly getting massive exposure on other people's feeds and getting the brand out there. What's interesting about that as well is our reps have started to pick this up, and they use it as a reason to reach out to customers.
So smart.
And just say, hey, Dylan, haven't heard from you for a while. I know you're in the staffing industry. Our CMOs did a podcast around the challenges in healthcare staffing. Thought you might want to have a listen. Love, Justin. Like, that's it.
So it's this reoccurring fuel for a drip follow-up that doesn't feel salesy or, hey, I'm nagging you about this deal or come to a meeting, but hey, I'm adding value because we're providing something interesting.
Exactly. So our reps have really gotten a lot of good use out of that. We're now at over 10,000 subscribers. We've never spent a dime on the podcast beyond our internal equipment that we bought. It's all been, self-generated. I guess we have a multimedia engineer, so I guess you have to count his salary, but he does a lot of other videos for us too. And so the podcast is kind of one of his side gigs, but we don't spend any money to promote it. We don't spend any money to advertise it. We just do it. We get great people and we promote it out. And it's kind of taken on a life of its own. And I knew it took on a life of its own when I get people now emailing us requesting to be on the podcast. So
you're actually getting PR pitches now.
I do get PR pitches. I get about 3 or 4 a week. And then other people from my network who I know are like, hey, Justin, heard you're on your podcast. Can I come on?
Nice.
And so, we are actually already booked through like middle of February of next year.
Wow.
And we're sitting here at the end of November today.
That's so good. You mentioned that your sales team has been able to use it for kind of following up with value for their network. Do you ever empower your sales team or maybe at least your CRO to actually leverage it to help book guests to get kind of, potential people from your ABM list that might be high value as a soft way to kind of build a relationship with them?
Yes and no. So
a little bit of church and state.
A little bit of church and state. It's been more the other way around, where I've got a network, and I won't mention the company, but the president of this company came on the podcast because I had worked with him 3 jobs ago. And our sales rep came into my office and was like, I can't believe you got to XYZ. I've been trying to get to him for so long. can I get an introduction and use the podcast? And so, he didn't know that I had this relationship, because why would he, unless he trolled my entire LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
that's happened a couple of times, actually, where I've been able to get guests where we were trying to break in and we hadn't been able to break in at the sales level. And then because I went tops down based on a personal relationship, we were able to get in and actually close some deals from it. But I do kind of have church and state separation, because I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's smart. I think if there's synergies that happen organic, that's great. But I have found, it's a great way for sure to have conversations with people that maybe normally wouldn't take a sales meeting or even an intro meeting, but they're willing to, share time with you online and get that exposure, that cross promotion of audience. So that's really smart. Cool. I want to pivot a little bit into your recent experience from your IPO. I was lucky enough to sit on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange during an IPO recently in a company that I invested in, which was a very fun experience. I didn't get to go up top like you did where the bell is, but I got to be down on the floor watching the executive team and the board up there, and the party that they have behind the closed doors, they get to do in the reception room before you walk out. It's a amazing advertising and marketing inflection moment in a company's trajectory. And I've heard you speak of it as that. Of course, it's a capitalization exercise. It's many, many things, but it is also an extremely important marketing moment in a company's journey. Can you talk a little bit about the marketing elements of an IPO? What goes into the preparation? What does the day of look like? What does the aftermath look like? And you guys actually executed a rebrand right before this in anticipation. I don't know if it was if the IPO is what put that in motion or not, but I know you had that running in tandem, which must have been quite of a thing to manage both at the same time.
It was quite an amazing experience, and it was a blur.
Yeah.
So when I joined Definitive, and I was talking with Jason, our CEO at the time, and he's like, "Yeah, Justin, it's a full build. I think we're going to go public fall of 2023, early 2024." I'm like, "Great, I got plenty of time," because we didn't have much of a brand presence. We were healthcare data and analytics to help you grow. That's not wrong.
Yeah, it's not very exciting.
Not very exciting.
Yeah.
Our look and feel looked like everybody else out there. We didn't have a consistent voice or tone. We didn't have a vision. We didn't have a mission. We didn't have a tagline. We didn't have a consistent product naming structure. No consistent tone. So I said, "Jason, I'm in 3 years. I can totally fix this thing." So I'm on board like 30 to 40 days. And we have a board meeting, my first board meeting. And I give up my report out. And then somebody comes in from one of the PE shops and goes, "So we've done a bunch of economic forecasting, and we think the IPO window is going to close around the end of 2021. So you guys need to go public next summer." I'm like, "What?" And, not only am I like, "What?" First off, I want to take that guy to Vegas, because he was spot on right. Like, oh my God, spot on right. At that point in time, I did not know that. I was like, "This guy's crazy. Like, I can't do a full rebrand of the company and go IPO at the same time." But guess what we did? Full rebrand of the company. And just for giggles, by the way, we also decided to update our entire website and move website platforms. Because if I'm going to rebuild the website, I might as well uplift the whole technology underneath it. We moved on to Acquia. And so we hired a branding agency, took the entire ELT and the company through a who do we want to be when we grow up, came up with a whole new, like I said, vision, mission, voice, tone, casual, engaging, new logo, new typeface, new color schematic, new naming structure, new tagline, discover opportunity. Did all of that at the same time as we were hiring an investment bank and working on the S1, which is the document that you have to file with the government and the SEC when you're planning to go public. And a IPO is a big marketing event for a company, right? It's your opportunity to tell the story. Yes, it's important to raise capital, and that's really at the end of the day what it is. But you get the spotlight shined on your company because you are ringing the bell and we're on NASDAQ. And so you get all that. And so you've got to make sure that your story is super duper airtight.
Yeah.
And you tell the story so many times to investors, you get it really good. It's a great workshop. So we were rebranding the company, rebuilding the website, writing the S1. A really big part for me, in addition to helping out with the S1, was really working on the analyst day. And so you have this day when all of the investment banks come and meet with you, and it's done virtually now. It used to be in person, but now it's really done virtually. And the entire ELT is like, a 200 slide deck. It's like a 6-hour meeting, and the entire ELT has to walk through the business in a painful level of depth because you're asking these people to spend like hundreds of millions of dollars on your company, right? So they should ask any question that they want. And the job of the CMO there was really the chief storyteller, right? Working with the banks to tell the story, making sure that what the CFO says ties to what the CTO says, ties to what the product says. If the product says we're going to go after the biopharma market, then I need to have the chief revenue officer be able to talk about what the sales strategy is in the biopharma market. And when you have that many slides, you want to make sure that the whole story hangs together. Ton of work on that. At the same point in time, we also had to do a whole series of videos that explained who we are. There's a whole cottage industry, which I didn't know about, of IPO video vendors.
Wow.
And so we had to do a 2.5-minute animated explainer video. What is healthcare commercial intelligence? Who do we have? What is it? Why does it matter? And then a 40-minute kind of shortened investor story, right? Bunch of CEOs or executives sitting in, blazers and, pretty backgrounds and talking about our company and customer success stories. You have like 5 or 6 customer testimonials. And I had to partner very, very closely with the video agency on writing the script. I had to coach the whole ELT through how to, I've never done the video presentation before. How do we get that? How do we edit the story? How do we get to? I could probably still recite that video for you now, all 40 minutes of it word for word, because I think I watch it times, give or take, during the summer when we're doing that. And then, one of the other interesting parts of this was I was one of the few people who actually was involved in the decision as to whether to go on the NASDAQ or on the New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah, because that's a lot of that is a media buy, right? In some ways.
A lot of it is a media buy, and they both put together both of them, very impressive marketing packages and how they're going to help you. And, NASDAQ, you get to use their tower. The New York Stock Exchange, you get to put the banner in front of it, right? And so we were trying to figure out, in addition to the listing fees and everything else, how do we best leverage the NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange offers to get marketing visibility for our company. And then, on the day of the IPO, it's a marketing event. And really, at the end of it, all the stuff is done at that point, right?
Yeah.
And so it's arranging interviews for your CEO with, MSNBC and CNBC and, Bloomberg and everybody else. True story, I picked the color of the confetti paper that rained on us when we went live. I helped arrange, the lunch, the dinner, the after party. You're telling everybody what they need to wear. It's like going to a big party. And then, after that, you take a week to get your voice back. And B, I partner very closely with our CFO on our investor relations, right? I mean, he's a numbers guy. He's not a communicator. I'm a communicator, not really a numbers guy. You put us together and we're a dynamic duo. And so, I write the earnings script, for example, every quarter. I talk to the CEO, what do you want to say? I talk to the CFO, what do you want to say? I get the customer stories. And based on all that, and then I, of course, work with the general counsel to make sure that everything is legally compliant.
Yeah.
But, and then as we're working on the Q&A, I'm helping to draft the questions for the Q&A, actually, both the questions and the answers, so that when we go in front of these investors, we're rehearsed and we're prepared and we're on message, which is super duper important for an ELT to be aligned and on message every time you talk to investors.
Yeah, no, I love that. Could you talk about the number one reason why you decided to go with NASDAQ from a marketing perspective? I think that's just an interesting choice. or an interesting thought process of what compelled you to go with one over the other?
At the end of the day, for us, it came down to NASDAQ tends to be a little bit more technology driven, and we are a SaaS company, and NASDAQ has a little bit more of that tech cachet.
Yeah,
And so, and a comparable set of peers for us on the NASDAQ. At the end of the day, it was apples and oranges when it came down to the marketing benefits and what they were going to do. For us, it really came down to going on a market with a competitive set of benchmark peers.
Perfect. Okay, that's a great insight into others that are getting ready to go through that process at some point. So I want to pivot a little bit to a marketing philosophy that I've heard you mention, and I've heard it from other CMOs, including the former chief marketing officer of Farmers Insurance, who we spent a lot of time on the podcast talking about this topic. But the idea is that, in every other job in the C-suite, you would never, as a leader, march into maybe the chief technology officer and say, hey, I've got an opinion on, what cloud hosting system we should be on or what cybersecurity software we should use. But the reality is everybody is exposed to marketing. So therefore, everybody feels like they should have an opinion on marketing. The CMO of Farmers was Mike Linton, who's now the chief revenue officer of Ancestry. I think had a little bit more of a guarded perspective around the idea that because everybody has an opinion, that's why you need to keep it really with the smallest group of people and really make sure that you don't get boardroom creative, right? Stuff that sales has a impact on, and you really keep the cutting edge elements of the creative sharp. But I think you had a healthy perspective that because everybody has an opinion, their voices do need to be heard from time to time. So can you talk a little bit about your philosophy around that?
Yeah, I love that you brought this up. It's really something that's important to me. It's kind of core to my philosophy of marketing. You're right. I can't march into our CTO's office and say, hey, we should go on Amazon Web Services over Google Cloud for X, Y, Z reasons. I have no idea, right? He's going to make that call, right? Which technology platform we're going to be on. And I can't go and tell our CFO about, which accounting rules we're going, to implement or what our revenue recognition philosophy should be. That's his call to make, not mine. But, at the end of the day, every single person is being marketed to hundreds of times a day. You can't watch TV. You can't open up an internet browser without being marketed to. And as a result, we all kind of know what good marketing is. We might have differing opinions on what's good or bad, but generally there's kind of a general acceptance. Like generally Apple is good marketing, right? People think they're pretty good at it. Coke is pretty good marketing. McDonald's is pretty good marketing. And so if you're going to be a marketer, you have to realize that you're speaking on behalf of the company and people feel very emotional about that, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the choice of Amazon versus Microsoft versus Google as our tech platform doesn't really matter to me, right? I trust the CTO. But if I've positioned the company in a way that our CTO or frankly one of his engineers doesn't feel like is in alignment with his or her values or how we want to talk about it, it hurts. It hurts.
That matters.
It matters, and it hurts them on an emotional level. People give a lot of time to their company and they get emotionally attached. And I think particularly in a branding exercise, you've got to get a brand that resonates not only with the market, but with your employees, because you want everybody to feel proud about where they work and how they feel about it. And in my opinion, it's an enormous privilege to speak on behalf of all of those employees, right? There are very few people in a company who actually get to speak about the company to the world, right? The CMO is one of those people. It's a privilege, and it's one that I take tremendously seriously. And so, the trick when you're doing all this is you have to hear everybody out. You don't necessarily have to listen to them. Everybody is entitled to their opinion, and you as the CMO have to listen to all of those opinions, right? And you hear them out. And a good CMO, in my opinion, will start to do pattern recognition. And if you have a certain visceral response, maybe that's not the right thing. One of our favorite exercises that we did when we were rebranding Definitive was we did an exercise around archetypes. And, are people explorers? Are they the hero? Are they the wise one? And, are they the rogue? And archetypes are great because they are everywhere if you just point them out. Star Wars is an archetype. You can look at Han Solo as the rogue, Luke Skywalker as the young, explorer, blah, blah, blah. Friends, same type of thing. They have different archetypes, different 6 characters on Friends. And so, we actually did a survey with every single employee in the company and explained what the archetypes are, showed them videos of it, and then had people vote what archetype you think Definitive should be. Oh, and by the way, here are our top 6 competitors. What archetypes do you think that they are? And we used all that, and we aligned at Definitive that we are an explorer / navigator. We're going to help you navigate things. And that really resonated with everybody. Everybody can kind of get behind that. We're going to help you untangle the mess of healthcare. And you've heard me talk about that several times in this podcast, kind of a navigation theme. That archetype guides all of our marketing that we do. But it was a very inclusive process to bring everybody on board, because I could have just gone away with my head of corporate marketing in our agency and come back and been like, hey guys, here's your new brand. And everybody would have been like, thanks, but no. Even if it was the best brand in the world, you've got to bring people on the journey with you. And as a CMO, sometimes that means you have to realize that it's better to get 80% of the way to where you think you want to be with 100% of the people on board than 100% of where you want to be by yourself.
Wow. I love that perspective, because it sometimes goes a little bit counter to how I see other corporate marketing folks maybe think about, hey, too much consensus can dilute creativity or take the edge off things. So I think that's a really healthy perspective. And if you think about employee engagement, net promoter score, internal things, if you don't bring those folks along on the journey, then you're not going to have consensus and buy-in, and people aren't going to be happy.
Yeah.
So I love that perspective. That's really cool. In another interview, you talked about the healthcare industry, and maybe this is an issue that some of your customers face more often than maybe you, being the data provider and the insights provider. But you talked about how healthcare is one of the only industries in which, when you have a bad experience, you need to go back and have more of the product. Can you talk about that challenge and how you think that customers should be addressing that challenge in today's market?
So that is one I'm impressed with. Listen, like all my old interviews, by the way. Making me realize I've only got a certain number of stories here. We're going to get some new stories. It's actually, it's not a problem that we have here at Definitive, but it is really a huge problem in the healthcare industry, right? I mean, if you go to a restaurant and there's a fly in your soup, you're not going back there tomorrow. If you go and you get surgery and the doctor leaves a scalpel in you, you're going back to the hospital tomorrow to get that scalpel removed, right? If they don't treat you, you're not healthy, you keep going back and you've got to get more. And so I think, as you're thinking about what's wrong with our healthcare system, we're not measuring enough on outcomes. And healthcare is really still, if you're talking about the transition from fee for service to fee for value, right? And we need to move to a healthcare system, which is basically where people are compensated based on outcomes and how healthy they keep you versus actually performing a surgery, right? This has been a big theme of my podcast as I've had doctors come on, as we've had a lot of chief medical officers on, and one of them tells me the story, that an oncologist actually makes a lot of their money based on the chemotherapy drugs that they prescribe to you. So what's the perverse incentive there? They're incentivized to give you the most expensive chemotherapy drug, even if it's not the right one for you, because they're going to get, if you get 10%, would you rather prescribe the $1,000 drug or the $10,000 drug? Real quickly, what are the incentives? And so we're in a healthcare system where the incentives are misaligned with the outcomes. And so rather, you need to start being paid on the outcome. The problem with that, and again, this is why no one has solved the healthcare problem. And I'm not saying that I need to. I can observe the problem and go, gee, it's really nice. If you're an oncologist, let's keep going with this example. Do you want to get paid on the number of patients that you cure? That's cancer. We haven't beaten cancer yet, right? And so do you then get paid on the number of people that you can get into remission? How do you define a good outcome? And how do you define that across it? It's easy to say, I want to make sure that if I'm a primary care physician, I want to have an outcome where 90+% of my patients are vaccinated against COVID. And insurance companies are going to pay for that because it's cheaper to get you vaccinated than to get you to a hospital. And in some primary care, the outcome is very easy to measure. But as you get more and more complex cases and you get to more and more of the specialties, measuring quality outcomes becomes very different and frankly, very subjective. And it becomes even more subjective when you've got different insurance companies with different definitions of what a quality outcome is. Not to mention the fact that government has its own perspective on what a quality outcome is. And so I think that's where you start getting into the challenge of how do I measure quality versus just doing the same procedure over and over again. I think we all know that fee-for-service isn't the right answer. Measuring outcomes in value-based care is tricky, is where we need to go. I mean, the other way to do it, obviously, is to go and do what they've done in Canada or the UK, which is, privatize the whole thing. Government takes care of it all, and, free healthcare for all. But there's no such thing as free healthcare for all. Someone's paying for it somewhere.
Totally. Yeah. You talk about incentives. I think the other thing, as somebody not with a heavy understanding of the space, but you hear so much about liability, right? So doctors maybe, order every test that they need to do and maybe over prescribe because it's better to be able to say that you did everything possible under your control to, come up with a certain outcome. And then no one can come back and sue you to say you didn't do X, Y, Z when maybe that, only needed, something that was less invasive or less intense. So it seems like incentives are an interesting, an issue that probably neither of us will solve on this podcast, but I think it's important for as marketers to be able to see what some of the macro issues are and what some of the things that are being highlighted. So I love that.
That's been a consistent theme, actually, of my Definitively Speaking podcast, is I bring lots of experts on from all different angles of the healthcare industry. And we spent incentives has been a consistent theme, a lot of different perspectives. And no two people have had kind of the same answer to it, which has been really interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. So I also wanted to touch on another interview that I watched from you from your MBA program at MIT Sloan. You talked a little bit about the process in which you executed when you actually launched out on the job search that ended up with you getting your role as CMO at Definitive. I loved your perspective because it was so intentional. It had such process behind it as far as, keeping a journal. So you felt like you had daily incremental success in logging all of the things that you did, really setting up a sales funnel where you set goals around how many outreaches you were going to do to your network. You tracked that in a CRM, even if your CRM was as rudimentary as a spreadsheet. You had rigor around who were you going to reach out and talk to, when was the last time you talked to them, what was the outcome. You had an organized approach to the outreach piece. And what I loved about it was you also did some really interesting components around doing research on yourself, things like Clifton Strength Finders and really doing your own diagnostic to locate, who are you as an executive? What do you bring to the table? But more importantly, what are the roles that you're looking for, really narrowing that down. So when you had a conversation with a potential contact in your network, you could have a specific ask that they could actually flip through their mental Rolodex and come up with some hits. And then I thought the funniest part was after all this rigor, it was your neighbor that introduced you to your role. But I think if you hadn't gone through that process, maybe that conversation wouldn't have come up with your neighbor. You wouldn't have talked to him about, what you're doing, and he wouldn't have come up with a contact that ultimately led you to your role. So can you talk a little bit about that process? I thought it was fascinating and something that executives really need to hear if they have any chance or any any idea of, in a market like this, of what it takes to really find those high-level executive roles?
Yeah, absolutely. You just did a really good job, by the way, of outlining it. So I'm going to sound a little bit repetitive, but I'll kind of talk a little bit about it. But you took some good
Sure.
notes there. I basically took the approach that I'm a product, right? I am an executive, and as a marketing executive, I should be able to sell and market myself. And so I needed to understand what my value proposition was and what my competitive gaps are. And then I ran a sales process, right? So I put together a sales funnel, a CRM system. It was an Excel spreadsheet. It was, 150 started out, only wound up being over 450, almost 500 names of people, right? And, the amazing thing about the world is that anybody will find 15 minutes for you. And I subscribe to this, by the way. I find 15 minutes for anybody who reaches out to me, and I talk to them, and I've given a lot of advice to people who I just don't know. But you've got to make it super duper easy for them. They've got to know, what do you want? And so, I realized in the process that I've been really historically very reactive about my job search versus proactive and intentional, right? So, reactive means a headhunter called me. Oh, that sounds interesting. I'll go and interview for that. Versus I worked with a coach, and I would recommend that to anybody. And the coach helped me figure out what really mattered to me. And I realized that I was very passionate about working in healthcare. And I find it very mission driven and making the world a better place for my own small, tiny corner. And I'm only making a tiny, tiny little bit a better place, but I'm making the world a better place. And that's really important to me.
Yeah.
I realized that I no longer wanted to work in big companies, right? So I was coming from CVS and Aetna. So I didn't even want to go apply to Cigna or United or Walgreens or GE. I said I really wanted to go work in a small company where I'd be on a leadership team in my own, controlling my own destiny a little bit more. And there are things that I was going to sacrifice for that, right? I realized going down this path meant I probably never would be CEO of CVS. Okay, well, I'll accept that. The chance of it happening anyway are probably slim and or none. That's definitely none. But I realized that I knew I wanted to go be a CMO or a CPO, Chief Product Officer, of a small privately held healthcare IT or healthcare services company that was going to experience an equity event in the next 5 years. That's pretty specific.
Yeah.
But it's not as specific as you think, right? I didn't put any geographic constraints on it. I was willing to work remotely. I didn't really put any constraints on it in terms of company size, how small or how big that it was. I did say I wanted to be on the leadership team. That was very important to me. Healthcare is, a $4 trillion industry. So there's a lot of jobs that are there. But what that enabled me to do is, as I worked through my system, people I go say, even now, 3.5 years later, look how quickly that just flew off my tongue, right? That's because I trained myself.
Yeah.
And Justin, what do you want? What do you like about that? I can explain that to you. And, doing a job search can be very, very demotivating. It's like sales, right? For every one yes, you got to get 25 no's. And so if you hold yourself accountable, and it's literally just a Microsoft Word document, I said I needed every day to have 2 calls and to set up 2 calls. That was it. So 4 things a day. It could be 15 minutes of a meeting with no purpose or just a networking meeting. And you always ask them, who else can I talk to? And you start to build things up. And you start to get feedback. And you start to realize, well, this part of my story resonated. And this one, they gave me a complete and total blank stare. So don't say that again. And you start to figure out, oh, that guy seems really interesting. That guy's a nut job. I don't want to work for him, right? Even though his product is really good. This guy over here, interesting. I think I could go work for that. You start learning the types of people you want to work for, and your funnel starts to work its way down. And even now, I still have that spreadsheet of all the people that I've talked to. 3.5 years later, and what their contact information is. So you always keep notes about them, and then when you're going to follow up. And it's that process of running your CRM and controlling your own destiny, because otherwise you're just going to do a lot of activity without purpose, versus this really helps guide your activity. And it also helps you give that feeling of accomplishment, so you don't just sit there and get discouraged. Hey, I made 2 calls today. Hey, I got 2 more. That's good. And it's a volume thing. And yeah, I found this job because my neighbor introduced me to the CEO of Definitive Healthcare. But my neighbor also knew that I was looking for a CMO or CPO job at a healthcare services company. And he said, hey, I met this guy, Jason. I was golfing with him. He's the CEO of a healthcare company, Justin. I know you said you wanted to do something in healthcare. Let me connect you. So even then, in a random connection, I was still on message. And because by the time I got in front of Jason, and true story, right? I didn't know that Jason was actually looking for a CMO. I just knew Jason had Advent International and Spectrum, 2 tier A private equity firms, invested in his company. I got on the phone with Jason with the goal of asking to be introduced to the investors at Advent and Spectrum who had invested in Definitive Healthcare, because I wanted Jason to pass me on. Maybe those people, because I realized someone at Spectrum may have 10 different potential companies that I could work with. So if I could get to that Spectrum partner, that's a 1 to 10 ratio. That's high odds. And so I get on the phone, and Jason's like, yeah, actually my CMO just resigned like last week.
Wow.
And I haven't even started looking for a CMO yet. Would you be interested? I'm like, of course I'd be interested. He goes, great, let's interview right now. And so because I had been doing this for so long, and I had worked with my coach on my story, and I knew my value props, and I had my questions and answers prepared, even though I had no idea I was going to interview that day, I was ready when he said that. And I may never have gotten Jason on the phone again.
Yeah.
I had not been prepared when he showed up. And I got a job offer 4 weeks later.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I think it's such a great story of, I think the intentionality of what you went out and the fact that you went out and sought a coach. I mean, I feel like you could be an executive coach now through running this process as far as a executive recruiting coach. But at the end of the day, that intentionality that you set you, it may have felt like a series of choice events or chance events that happened that led you to the role, and a lot of luck and kismet in between. But it was really the preparation that got you into that mindset, so you were ready for that moment. So I think it's a great lesson for those out there that are looking for new opportunities and might want to move around. It's a real process that you need to run yourself through in order to find the job. The good jobs are not going to be posted on Indeed or LinkedIn. They're going to be those those chance encounters with somebody that doesn't even realize that they need you until they talk to you at that moment. So that's awesome.
And the scariest part about that is ruling things out, right? Like, it was scary to say, I'm not going to go talk to someone at United or Walgreens or someplace else, right? I ruled out a whole series of jobs because I was like, I could just stay at CVS if I just wanted to do that, right? It was really the intentional part of saying, I'm not going to do that. And I have enough confidence that I can find something that will make me happy. And I had to figure out, the people there were wonderful. It just wasn't what I wanted to do with my life anymore.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with saying that they're great, but that's not for me anymore.
Yeah, totally. Makes sense. All right. For this not last question, but getting down to the end here. So my space is around the influencer marketing, creator marketing, exec comms. Really, how do you turn LinkedIn into a social platform for B2B as it pertains to the influencer marketing and content marketing piece? So I'm just curious if you guys have done anything in and around the LinkedIn influencer world. Are you starting to think of LinkedIn more as a social network versus, a place that you maybe buy media for B2B leads? How are you guys approaching LinkedIn organic social and the influencer and creator ecosystem that LinkedIn's becoming?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. A lot of it actually ties back to the blog. And posting the blog, and we have a social media coordinator here who posts interesting articles and data. But what we really do, and the key to our organic search success, which is, by the way, up 60% year over year.
Wow.
And I'm going to give the secrets so no one should take their pencils out, is good, fresh content. So we have a team here that writes something we call healthcare insights. And what we do is we actually use our SEO team to monitor and see what people are searching for. What are the top 10 hospitals in New York City? Who are the top oncology doctors in Miami? What percent of people are going to get cancer in California this year? What
Mm,
is a what is a nurse practitioner? It's kind of anything. We then write these 500 to 700 word pieces that answer these specific questions. They are optimized for keyword searches. We put them out there and Google loves this because it's fresh, clean content. It's not promoting, it's not buying, it's informational. And then that comes to the top of Google, that comes to our website, and then our stalker box pops up and says, click here for a free trial.
yep.
We also take that content and we put it on LinkedIn, and we regularly post it on LinkedIn. And then we use Sociable to get all of our sales and marketing and product and even in finance to get them to post these same healthcare insights on their feed. And they're interesting little snippets of stuff, right? Like, aren't you curious what the average billing is for a hospital in New York City? I
Yeah.
know I am, right?
Mhm.
And so people are happy to post this information about it because everybody likes to get dinner table conversation. And so we're taking these pieces of content, making Google happy, which drives up our website. They go onto LinkedIn, and so we get click-throughs from there to our website. And then our employee base puts it on their website. So we're extending our network out that way. And we had a team of writers, 3 writers whose sole job is to keep pumping these things out after our SEO team researches what the things people are curious about. And that's been the secret to our success.
I love it. That seems like an amazing flywheel. So you've got the Google search trends data in and around your category. Then you can go into your platform and find the insights from all the data that you guys have to answer those questions. And then you repurpose that for social content. So yeah, it sounds like you have a great strategy. I think, probably, I don't know if you guys are already doing this, but are you also hosting your podcast as a blog post and then transcribing the interview for SEO value?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, nice. Yeah, you got
Oh, yeah.
that down. I love it. That's cool. Well, look, that's an amazing insight for our audience, for those B2B marketers that want to get better at using LinkedIn as a social flywheel. It starts with great content that's insightful and is optimized for, what are the trends out there that are relevant to your industry. So very insightful. Well, thank you for that. Well, Justin, we are officially at the final question. What are you most excited about, say, in the next 6 months about what you have going on at Definitive? What's exciting you about the future?
What's really exciting to me about the future is that we are a growth engine, right? And so, I think I speak on behalf of everybody listening today that I sure hope the economy turns next year, right? It has been a tough year, I think, for all of us, particularly in the B2B space. And what I love about Definitive is that we help people achieve commercial success, right? And so what I'm excited about is as people, let's hope interest rates stabilize, and let's hope that people loosen up the investment criteria and they start getting ready for growth. And when they get ready for growth, we're generally one of the first calls that they make because they're going to start ramping up their sales engine. And they need us so they can have some of those better, more informed conversations with the right people about it. And so in a year when most people were just kind of treading water, I think next year the economy, again, knock on wood and bang on my head here, will turn. And I'm bullish about what 2024 will bring and how we can help our clients. I think, not to brag too much, I think maybe we can be someone that helps accelerate the economy, right?
Yeah.
Help match people with the products and services that they need. At the end of the day, we're about getting the drugs, the devices, the tools and supplies into the hands of the people who are delivering care. And we're about doing that efficiently and effectively. And I love that mission. I really, truly love that mission about the company. We're helping to make the world a better place, and we're helping people get healthier. We're not delivering care, but we're enabling care delivery. And, maybe next year we'll see people calling us up saying, hey, I got investment from my CFO to start growing. who are the right people at the hospital I need to talk to about my new cancer drug or my new medical device, or this really new precision medicine tool that people can use their iPhone to treat XYZ disease. That's what I'm bullish about, and that's what I'm excited about for the next 6 months and even all of next year.
Yeah, I love it. Well, you guys are doing great work. Super excited to have been able to meet you today, spend some time walking through your background, and thanks so much for your insightful and honest sharing of actual tactics that people can take to their businesses and actually implement in their own models, because a lot of times these podcast people sometimes want to keep that stuff, hidden and away from the eyes of potential competitors and things like that. But I think, you've given some people some really great insights and some actionable things to do next. So Justin, thanks again for your time. For those of you that are watching along at home, if you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to subscribe. And if you really loved it, give us a 5-star review or a review the podcast. It helps us get discovered by more people. Or if you think a colleague might benefit from the conversation we had with Justin today, if you share it, it's a great way for us to grow as well. So thanks, everybody. And Justin, thanks again for your time.
Hey, thanks for having me. I had a great time.
Cheers. Bye-bye.